I've said repeatedly that I believe that teaching is a sacred profession and that art is a form of teaching. So, with the help of Bernadette, I'd like to teach you a little.
Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair, sending the clouds.
Most people, when they think of musicals, see bright lights, extravagant costumes, and above all, light-hearted entertainment. After all, how could people randomly breaking into song and dance be anything but mindless and joyful? For the most part, these thoughts are correct. Playwrights and composers want profit. It's the name of the game, and therefore they give the people the popularized, glittery show they crave when they go to the theater. But one composer, lyricist, and artist had the guts to change all that. Stephen Sondheim was born March 22nd, 1930. He first experienced music when his father placed his little hands atop his and played show tunes. However, Sondheim did not receive formal training until he was 6 years old, and even then, he had not developed a real passion for music. It wasn't until age 10, when his parents separated and Sondheim moved to Pennsylvania with his mother, that he realized his calling. Here he met and soon befriended the son of the most well-known composer and lyricist of the day, Oscar Hammerstein. Hammerstein, known primarily for his being part of the Rodgers and Hammerstein duo, served as the first and greatest inspiration in young Sondheim's life. Hammerstein served as a father figure for Sondheim, so naturally the young boy wanted to follow in his footsteps. Thus began his career as a composer and lyricist. Sondheim's first work was entitled By George. He thought it was brilliant and that he would become the first 15-year-old to win a Tony. He showed it to Hammerstein and asked for his professional opinion, so he gave it and said it was the worst thing he had ever read. Hammerstein then taught him the ins and outs of writing shows. He taught him about lyrics, that they must be simple in order for the audience to absorb them. The lyrics may not read well, but when they are put to music, they will explode. Sondheim learned how to set up songs and scripts until he was almost as good as his teacher. After these lessons were over, Sondheim went to Williams College where he majored in English, but after the first year he decided to become a music major. Not long after, Sondheim started his first major work, West Side Story. Technically, it was not his musical. He only wrote the lyrics, although he begged to be allowed to write the music. Funny enough, Sondheim was prepared to turn down the job for this reason, but Hammerstein convinced him to take it for the writing experience. Little did they know it would be one of the most successful and classic works Broadway had ever seen. Even so, Sondheim felt he had written lyrics based on another person's standard and had not found his own sound yet. This was reinforced by the critics who said they loved everything about the musical, save the lyrics. Despite the critics, Sondheim continued to write. As he was trying to develop his writing, he developed some rituals for it as well. He wrote exclusively under the influence of alcohol. Not so much that he would be drunk, but just enough to lose some of his inhibitions. He also never wrote at the piano. Often he would write lying down on the couch. He let the melodies play in his mind without taking the chance of his fingers playing the wrong notes. But maybe the most beneficial of these formalities was how he put himself in the place of the actor, making it very easy for the performer to assume the role. His method, despite its quirks and eccentricities, worked wonders. Whatever he wrote, he sent to Hammerstein for his guidance and approval. Until 1960, when the man unfortunately passed. To this day, it is difficult for him to talk about Hammerstein's death. Right before his passing, Sondheim asked if Hammerstein would autograph a portrait for him. He wrote, "For Stevie, my friend and teacher." In doing this, he taught Sondheim the impact not only of teachers to students, but students to teachers. In 1970, Sondheim participated in the creation of Company. The musical is a bit odd because it's not really a musical, but it's not really a revue either. It's a beautiful mixture of both. The show follows 35-year-old Bobby in his quest to find a wife, despite a startling fear of commitment. The play has no real plot and is extremely conceptual, but the real magnificence is in the musical layering. Sondheim wrote every ensemble song to contain outstanding harmonies, as well as layered dialogue that mimics human speech patterns. In this play, more than any other, Sondheim achieves his goal of making the audience forget someone wrote the songs. This was the point at which Sondheim found his own style of writing, and it was a great one. His next work, A Little Night Music, was a more classical piece. Its feature song, Send in the Clowns, is one of the most revered musical pieces ever to be written. Sondheim saw nothing magnificent about this song. In fact, he thought it was mediocre at best, and almost wasn't even written. But once people heard it, they went wild. Almost every musical theater star has sung this song, including Angela Lansbury, Barbra Streisand, Bernadette Peters, and Frank Sinatra. This was the most well-known, widespread, infectious song Sondheim ever wrote. Up to this point, Sondheim had written several enchanting musicals that definitely captured the hearts and minds of his audience. However, it was Sunday in the Park with George that forever changed not only his outlook on his work, but also the work itself. This musical follows the story of 19th century painter Georges Seurat and his lover Dot, whom he often ignores to finish his beloved paintings. Sondheim put so much of himself into this show, his views on art, his love of the creative process, his comments about critics, so it stands to reason that out of all he's written, this is his favorite. The song Sunday in particular strikes a chord with the writer. When he was writing it, he wrote down the lyric forever and burst into tears because that's what art is. It is an eternal, magical entity that goes on long after the creator is dead and leaves behind a legacy. He learned so much from the experience. The book writer James Lapine taught him how to flow back and forth between music and dialogue with greater ease, and that served as a model for all the work Sondheim did thereafter. He and Lapine won a Pulitzer Prize for this musical, an exceedingly rare honor, making it arguably their greatest success. 4 years later, Sondheim wrote another Broadway great. Into the Woods tells the fractured fairy tales of Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk, and a poor baker. Sondheim loved writing for this musical because, much like Sunday in the Park with George, it had a beautiful message that touched him. While he never had any kids, he always wanted them, and this show teaches children and parents alike the value kids have in the world. Sondheim is a great believer in that. This is why he does what he does, not only for himself, but for the generations to come. While Sondheim has not produced any major works as of late, he is perpetually working. He has been the recipient of 8 Tonys, 8 Grammys, a Pulitzer, and so many other awards. He writes for small projects here and there, and even helped with the creation of the movie adaptation of his musical Into the Woods in 2014. He has also created an Inspirational Teacher Award for mentors who have gone to great lengths to teach and guide their students. Winners receive $10,000 and is spread on the organization's website. In reference to this award, Sondheim exclaimed, "Teachers define us. In our early years, when we are still being formed, they often see in us more than we see in ourselves, more even than our families see, and, as a result, help us to evolve into what we ultimately become." Not only has he been the subject of great teachers such as Oscar Hammerstein and Leonard Bernstein, but he has also given so much to young up-and-coming artists. His style of writing, as well as his attitude towards the field, have inspired so many young artists to follow their dreams regardless of what people say. But most of all, he teaches people to stay true to themselves. It is better to be disliked than to be ignored. This business is a hard one to make it in, but Sondheim has paved the way for all the mavericks and misfits that will follow him. He has truly changed the face of Broadway forever, and will continue to long after he is gone.